Hi guys, I'm Bobsi, and in this video we're going to look at how to set up virtual reality for multiplayer. Now we'll be using the Alteruna Multiplayer system, first of all because this is a sponsored video by them, so thank you very much Alteruna. But second of all, Alteruna was also built with virtual reality in mind, so this is a great match. So let me show you how to do just that. So first things first, when you're setting up a new Unity project, I have just selected to use the virtual reality setup already. So this isn't really a virtual reality direct tutorial, this is virtual reality multiplayer, so I'm not going to go through much about how the virtual reality part works. I'm just going to skip directly to the multiplayer and get that done. So first of all, as always we do with any multiplayer Alteruna setup, we want to create a network manager. Just an empty object, and we just add the multiplayer component to this, and we can just generate a new ID, and boom, multiplayer now works. Now we also want to go to the Alteruna folder and to the prefabs, and I'm just going to be using the room menu. Of course later on you might want to change this out for something else, your own setup, but for now we're just using the room menu to connect. Now I'm also going to be adding my own resources here. I've just set up some prefabs already. These are just a room, which I thought looked a bit nicer. These are just my own assets I built myself, and a post-processing volume as well. And because it's post-processing, I will need to just set up some stuff on the camera. All right, here we go. Now we have our nice scene. Now, first things first, let's get the player set up. So we have this XR rig already. I'm just going to rename this to our player, and we're going to give him the avatar component. This is how we know that this is a player component, or this is a player object. Sorry. And then we have to set network objects onto anything on him that we would like to network. So because we still want to be able to see each other's hands, and that's why it's important that we don't disable it. And we're going to add the transform synchronizable component to the right controller and to the left controller here. Like so, and now these will also be networked. Now what we also got to do is we got to set some spawn points, so I'm just going to make a new game object, call it spawn points, just zero that, and then I'm gonna make points here to just give it to player spawns as you saw in the introduction. And there we go. Now let's go into the network manager and add these points. So you can say automatically spawn avatar. We got to give it an avatar and then spawn per index because I want multiple spawn points. I want players to spawn on top of each other. And then this player character, we can just add him as a prefab and drag him into the network manager here. And there we go. Now he will technically spawn, so we can delete him now. Now you saw my post-processing disappear because the player had the camera. That's fine. We go into the camera here. And now these two are already networked, but we also want a head. We want to be able to see our player look around. So we got to think about what are we modifying when looking around. Well, it's the camera that's moving. If you try and go into play mode and you look at this component on the player while looking around, you'll see that it is the main camera that's moving around. Now, first of all, let's create the head. So let me create a 3D object here, call it cube. I'm just going to call it head, and I'm just going to give it some random size here. Zero this. So it fits here. It doesn't matter where this is because we're going to position it relative to the camera anyway. And now let's give this a smaller cube as visors or glasses, or you can call it whatever. I'm just going to call it glasses and make it 0.3, 0.9. Go, and I can move it a bit out the front. If you don't know what the front is, it is always the blue arrow basically. Up a little bit and then just give it a different material. So there we go. Now we can see this is a little head. It's not a good looking one, but it's a head nonetheless. And now comes the scripting part. So let's go onto our player and let's make our new script. I'm going to call this new script player BR control. You can call it whatever you'd like, but that's my naming. And we just attach this script to the player. Like so, and let's open up the script. Now, let me just remove everything that's in here, and let's start from the beginning. First of all, we'll need to reference the Alteruna avatar. This is in the Alteruna namespace, so you can see up here, I have using avatar equals to alteruna.avatar. We can just call this underscore avatar. That's how I like referencing my private variables with a little underscore in front. And let's go into the awake function and grab this avatar immediately. Now, if we go back to look at our player setup, you'll see that the avatar and the player VR controller script is on the same game object. So therefore, we can just say underscore avatar equals to get component, and then we grab the avatar component, and there we go. Now let's first focus on moving the head. So for this, we will need to get the head object and we'll need to get the camera object. Now, both of these are also underneath the same player prefab, so we can easily just reference these. So let me just make a serial as field. You can also make it a public if you'd rather do that. I'm just gonna private transform head and a serialized field, private camera. Now, first of all, we got to disable the camera that isn't ours. That's very important. So in a start function, let's just say if avatar.isMe, then we're going to take the camera.gameObject, enable.set active to false. I just realized really quickly I've made a mistake. We've got to set the camera to false if it is not me. Now, the reason why I'm setting it up like this is because we're going to be needing it further on anyway. But let's focus on the head for now. So let's go into the update loop and just make another check. Say if avatar is not me, we will just return. And then down here, we will take the head.local position and set it equals to the camera.transform.local position. And we can also grab the head rotation and set it equals to the camera.transform.rotation. It's really that simple. If you want to, you can go test it out now. The camera will now be working with the moving around the head. It's very satisfying to play around with actually, and I had a lot of fun with it. Now, something you'll notice if you go ahead and test it right now is you're able to see your own head, and obviously we don't want this. So what we're also going to do is we're going to make a new layer and use culling masks. Now, let me show you this in a second. So I'm just going to make a new serialized field private and int because we want the layer integer, and I'm just going to call this player self layer. Now let's go back to the player prefab, and if I click on the head and go up to layer, you'll notice that I've already made a player self layer, and you can see it's the integer of 6. So I'm going to click on this and say yes, change children. Then I'm going to go onto the player and just write 6 here where the player self layer is. Now we can also input the head and the camera immediately. So I'm going to put the head in here, and I'm going to grab the main camera in here, and there we go. Now let's go back to the script. Now we want to change the layer of the head and all the children of the head, which means you can have as many game objects under the head as you want. They will all have their layer changed. And we need to change this layer if it is us. Now the reason for this is because we will make it so that the camera cannot see this layer. And that's why we only want to change this layer for ourselves. So we can go to the head.gameObject first of all, and say .layer equals to player self layer. That's very straightforward. We're just changing the layer of the head. Now we want to loop through each child object that we have in the head. So each child object, it will be a transform. I'll just call this child, and it will be in the head transform. So this will basically mean that child will be all the children of the head image. Now we actually don't need to open it with brackets. We can just use a one-liner and say child.gameObject.layer is equals to player self layer. Very straightforward, and this now just works. Now, actually, the last thing that we need now is we need to disable the hands so that you cannot move each other's hands. Obviously, you don't want to move another player's hands, and you don't want them to be able to move yours. The way that we do this is we got to grab the component on the hands that does the tracking. So if we look at the right and the left controller here, you see they have something called track post driver. This is exactly what we want to grab. So let me go back into my script. So now we want to grab the track like this. So we're using the track post driver, and I'll actually just copy the name here and say equals to this reference. This should just work. Now when we reference track post driver, it knows that we're trying to get all of this. And now let's just make this as serialized fields. So serialized field private track post driver, and I'll call it right hand driver and left hand driver. This means that we now want to disable these drivers if we are not the owner of them. So right hand driver got enabled false, and left hand driver got enabled goes to false. And this should actually completely just work. So now let's go popularize. You can just drag the right hand control down here and the left hand control down here. Technically, the order doesn't matter. And now let's go test it all out. And so as you can see here, everything just works perfectly, and we can just play around with it like so. It's surprisingly fun, and it works really, really well, and it's very responsive. So I definitely would encourage you to have a go. If you need any help, don't fear to go into my Discord server and ask for help. For that sake, if you have Alteruna specific questions, you can also go to the Alteruna Discord server themselves. And for that sake, just leave a big thank you in the comments for Alteruna. They are super nice. I really love working with them, and they're providing a great product for free for you guys here. So once again, thank you very much, Alteruna, and I hope each and every one of you have a wonderful day.